Brr, it's freezing! At least you're not wet!
6 days. 6 days it hasn't stopped. The wood won't catch. It's all water. Look at my feet. Look at them. Look at them.
Everyone's feet look like that now.
Yeah, they do.
Right now, there's a roof over your head. You're not thinking about it. You haven't thought about it once today. Not when you woke up. Not when you heard rain hit the window and rolled over and went back to sleep. That roof is so boring to you that your brain has filed it under furniture. But for roughly 99% of human history, the thing you're sitting under was the single most expensive, labor-intensive, life-or-death technology your family owned. And rain, not lions, not cold snaps, not famine. Rain was one of the quiet killers that shaped how we built, where we lived, what we wore, and even what stories we told each other in the dark. By the end of this video, you'll understand why endless rain reshaped the human body, invented architecture, drowned an entire country in the middle of Europe, and left a scar in our mythology so deep that almost every culture on Earth still tells the same story about it. Let's start with the part everyone gets wrong. Most people assume rain was just uncomfortable, annoying. You get wet, you dry off, you move on. That's the modern assumption, and it's completely backwards. Rain kills through hypothermia, and hypothermia doesn't need snow, it needs wet skin and moving air. A human being soaked at 50 degrees Fahrenheit in a light breeze can lose core temperature faster than a dry human at 20 degrees. Wet is worse than cold. That's not folklore, that's thermodynamics. Here's where it gets interesting. We can actually see the exact moment early humans figured this out, because they left the evanescent sitting in mud for 23,000 years. In 1989, the water level of the Sea of Galilee dropped far enough to expose a site now called Ohalo II, excavated by the Israeli archaeologist Danny Nadel of the University of Haifa. What he found was extraordinary. 6 oval brush huts, built from tamarisk, willow and oak branches, with the floors deliberately dug down and lined. The plant material survived, because it was waterlogged and sealed from oxygen. That's the irony. The water that made those huts necessary is the exact reason we can still read them today. Think about that for a second. 23,000 years ago, before agriculture, before pottery, before writing, someone stood in the rain and thought, I am going to build a thing that stops this. But here's the thing, a brush hut leaks. Anyone who has ever put up a cheap tent knows the moment when you realize the roof is now technically a filter. So the real story of surviving rain isn't one invention, it's a chain of them, refined over thousands of generations, each one solving the failure of the last. Pitch, thatch, and drainage. Which brings us to the site that should be famous and isn't. In Yorkshire, England, at a place called Star Carr, the archaeologist Graham Clark of Cambridge ran excavations between 1949 and 1951 and uncovered something nobody expected from Mesolithic Britain around 9300 BC. A platform of split timber, laid deliberately along the boggy edge of an ancient lake. Split timber. That means someone took a tree, worked it lengthwise with flint, and engineered a dry surface in a wet landscape. This is the oldest evidence of carpentry in Britain, and its entire purpose was to stop human beings from standing in water. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Standing in water isn't just unpleasant, it's medically catastrophic over time. Constantly wet feet in cool conditions cause tissue breakdown, fungal infection, and open sores that invite bacterial infection in a world with no antibiotics. Armies in the 20th century lost more men to this than to some battles. Your ancestors were fighting that war permanently, barefoot, with no gauze and no penicillin. So they got clever about clothing, and this is where the myth-busting really begins. Ask most people what prehistoric rain gear looked like, and they'll picture a caveman in a shapeless animal pelt, hair side out, dripping wet and miserable. That image is wrong in almost every detail. Fur soaked through is a liability. It holds water against the skin and it takes days to dry. What actually works is a shed layer, something that sits over the warm layer and throws water off. And we have the receipt. In 1991, hikers in the Ötzi Alps found the body of a man who died around 3300 BC, now known as Ötzi. Among his equipment was a long cape woven from alpine grass, a shaggy, layered, water-shedding outer garment worn over his leather and fur clothing. It's essentially a Copper Age raincoat, and near-identical grass capes were still being worn by European shepherds into the 20th century. 5,000 years, same design. If it works, it works. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, the solution went in a completely different direction. Inuit and Yupik seamstresses developed the gut-skin parka, made from the intestines of seals and sea lions, cut into strips and stitched with a waterproof seam that swells when wet to seal itself. It's genuinely one of the most sophisticated garments ever made by human hands, and Western manufacturers didn't produce anything functionally comparable until synthetic rubberized fabric in the 1800s. Your $500 breathable shell jacket is chasing a design that was solved with a seal's digestive tract. But clothing only saves the individual. Rain attacks the settlement. Here's where it gets interesting, because once humans stopped moving seasonally and started staying put, rain went from a personal problem to an engineering problem. You can't walk away from a flooded valley when your grain is buried in it. And the archaeological record shows people responding with something that looks startlingly modern: drainage. Go to Orkney, off the north coast of Scotland, and you'll find Skara Brae, a Neolithic village exposed by a storm in 1850 and properly excavated by V. Gordon Childe between 1928 and 1930. It's around 5,000 years old, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids at Giza. The houses are built of stone and sunk into a midden mound for insulation. The passages between them are roofed, and running beneath the structures is a system of stone-lined drains. On an island where the wind and rain come sideways off the North Atlantic for months at a time, they didn't just build shelter, they built plumbing. Let that sink in. Before writing existed anywhere in Britain, people on a windswept Scottish island had solved grey water drainage. And they weren't alone. At Çatalhöyük in central Turkey, occupied from about 7100 BC and excavated by James Mellart in the 1960s, and later by Ian Hodder of Stanford from 1993 onward, the houses were packed wall to wall, with no streets, and people entered through holes in the roof. Everyone loves to describe this as strange or mysterious. It isn't mysterious at all when you consider that the roofs were also the walkways, the workspaces, and the drainage surfaces, and that the residents replastered their floors and walls obsessively, sometimes dozens of layers thick. That plaster is a maintenance record. It's the Neolithic equivalent of a homeowner who is very, very tired of a leak. Now let's talk about the scale of what these people were up against, because it wasn't just weather, it was climate. Around 8,100 years ago, something violent happened. As the great North American ice sheets melted, an enormous meltwater lake, Lake Agassiz Ojibwe, burst its ice dam and dumped a volume of fresh water into the North Atlantic that disrupted ocean circulation. Ice cores from Greenland, analyzed by researchers including Richard Alley of Penn State, record a sharp cold snap lasting roughly 160 years. In Europe, it meant cold and wet. In the Near East, it meant collapse and migration. This is now called the 8.2 kiloyear event, and it hit human communities that had only just committed to farming, meaning they had crops in the ground and nowhere to run. 3 consequences every time across the record: failed harvests, abandoned settlements, and movement. And the sea was rising, which brings us to the country you were never taught about. Between Britain and the Netherlands, under what is now the North Sea, there was land, a vast, rich, low-lying plain of rivers, marshes, and woodland that archaeologists call Doggerland. Fishermen have been dragging up mammoth bones and flint tools from it for over a century. Vince Gaffney and his team at the University of Birmingham used seismic survey data from the oil industry to map its lost rivers and coastlines, publishing the landmark reconstruction in 2009. Doggerland was inhabited, and between roughly 8,000 and 6,000 BC it went under, slowly, generation by generation, as meltwater raised global sea levels, with a probable final catastrophic blow from the Storegga submarine landslide tsunami off Norway around 6200 BC. An entire homeland erased by water, not in a myth, in the sediment. So how do you fight back against that much water? You get organized. In 2017, a team led by Bin Liu of the Zhejiang Provincial Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology published evidence that the Liangzhu culture in the Yangtze Delta had built a system of dams, levees, and reservoirs around 5,100 years ago, the earliest large-scale water management structures known anywhere on Earth, designed to handle monsoon flooding and protect a rice-growing city. And in 2016, geologist Wu Qinglong and colleagues published evidence in the journal Science for a colossal outburst flood in the Yellow River's Jishi Gorge around 1920 BC. A flood that may be the historical seed of China's ancient legend of Yu the Great, the hero who tamed the waters and founded a dynasty by doing it. Notice what just happened there. We crossed a line. We stopped talking about survival and started talking about story. Because this is the part that I think actually matters, and it's the reason rain shaped us more deeply than heat or cold ever did. Rain doesn't just soak you, rain traps you. It puts a group of human beings inside one small dark space together for days, sometimes weeks, with nothing to do and no way out, and that changed us. Think about what a rainy season actually is socially. It's enforced proximity, it's a hearth, a circle of faces, and a lot of empty hours. That is exactly the environment in which oral tradition, music, myth, tool refinement, teaching, and grievance holding all flourish. The Upper Paleolithic sites of Central Europe like Dolny Viestanish, first systematically excavated by Karol Absalon starting in 1924, are full of the kind of objects you make when you have time on your hands and a fire in front of you. Fired clay figurines, carved ivory, ornaments, portable art. Bad weather is not the enemy of culture. Bad weather may be the incubator of it. And there's a biological signature too. Persistent cloud cover means less ultraviolet light, which means less vitamin D synthesis, which means rickets, weakened bones, and difficult childbirth. The prevailing scientific view is that this pressure is a major driver behind the lightening of skin pigmentation in populations that moved into high latitude, low sun, high cloud regions of Europe and Asia. Rain didn't just change our houses, it plausibly helped change our faces. Then there's the flood story. The Mesopotamian flood narrative in the Epic of Gilgamesh, recorded on tablets from Ashurbanipal's library and translated by George Smith in 1872, a translation that stunned Victorian London because it predated and paralleled the Book of Genesis. Flood myths in India, in Greece, in China, across Aboriginal Australia, throughout the Americas. Not one shared event, most likely, but one shared experience, remembered by hundreds of separate peoples who all lived through rising water, and all reached for the same shape of story to hold it. We are a species that remembers the water, so let's put the whole thing on a line. 23,000 years ago, at Ohalo II, brush huts with dug floors, the first known architecture against weather. Around 11,300 years ago, at Star Carr, split timber laid over a bog so people could stand dry. Around 8,200 years ago, the Lake of Gases outburst chills and drowns a continent's worth of new farmers. Around 8,000 years ago, Doggerland disappears beneath the North Sea. 5,300 years ago, Ötzi walks into the Alps in a woven grass rain cape. 5,100 years ago, Liangzhu builds the world's first flood control dams. 5,000 years ago, Skara Brae installs stone drains under its houses. Around 3,900 years ago, the Jishi Gorge flood roars down the Yellow River and becomes a legend. And roughly 150 years ago, someone finally invented the thing you're using to keep the rain off your phone. Every time you check the forecast before you leave the house, you're doing exactly what they did. Reading the sky, guessing at the water, deciding whether today is a day to move or a day to stay. The instinct is older than the language you're thinking in. We didn't conquer the rain. We just learned to build lives in the gaps between it. So, barefoot, no roof, 3 straight weeks of it. Would you have made it? Tell me in the comments.